what does connection look and feel like? Because there are a lot of different avenues for connection. For some folks, it can be doing a puzzle together. For other people, it's just cuddling. For other people, it's sex. There can be a lot of different avenues for connection.
Hello, and welcome to Working with me, Dan Doriani, hosting a podcast where we explore faith, work, culture, and the way believers can make a difference in their corner of the world. So hello, everybody. Today, my guest is Jennifer Ware. She is a counselor. She works with couples. She works with individuals. And your field, Jennifer, is emotionally laden. You do emotionally focused therapy, which sounds like kind of a mouthful and kind of dangerous a little bit. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but I will say that we'll spend a chunk of our time, maybe most of our time, talking about something called Storytell, in which you invite people, maybe 5 or 6 at a time for a total of an hour, to tell their stories in front of a small audience. And you can watch this on YouTube. And that's kind of unusual. But Jennifer, what's it like to be a counselor focusing? I just almost cringe when I read emotionally focused therapy. It sounds like you deal with people who've been in a lot of pain, perhaps.
More often than not. Yeah, it's certainly not a field that's for the faint of heart. But it is, at least for me, it's a delight to be in it, both with the couples that I work with and the individuals as well. There is a real depth to the work that I think emotion-focused therapy, EFT, is a less of a mouthful way of saying that. Okay. It just really has a knack for getting to the heart of what folks are dealing with.
So there are two questions I want to ask you about this. The first one is, so when I hear emotion-related therapy, I think something terrible happened to somebody. Maybe that's not always the case. I also think that when my limited knowledge from pastoral side of counseling is that it's kind of hard to argue with somebody who says, I feel disappointed. Not you disappointed me, but I feel disappointed. And you're kind of not laying as much of a burden on the other person. You hurt me, you wounded me. You're saying perhaps simply, I'm hurt. It doesn't mean you hurt me. So there's sort of a light side to it, a functional side to it maybe, but there's also a fear that perhaps someone has been through a terrible trauma. Are they both true? Is one true more than the other?
One is more true than the other. There certainly can be elements of trauma involved, and frequently are. It's a rare person who escapes life without some measure of trauma, although
Usually it's people who die at the age of 10.
Well, and even that, the trauma's for everyone else.
Who dies suddenly at the age of 10. I don't know.
But that
everybody suffers eventually.
Everybody suffers eventually. And the degree can change. And the part of EFT that I really like is that it focuses and hones in on what are the patterns of emotional sort of action that lead to either disconnection or to connection. Because that piece of disconnection versus connection fundamentally changes how we experience suffering. And so that trauma piece may or may not be present, but the patterns are always present to some degree.
So can I ask as a follow-up, so if somebody, let's suppose, has an abusive parent and the other parent says, yeah, nothing really happened here. That's extraordinarily difficult because there's not only the trauma, but the disconnection from reality. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying more two people that disconnect after some very difficult event? Just spin it out however you want to, Jennifer,
now we're getting
please.
into emotionally focused family therapy, Dan, which is a subset of EFT and would be covering and really dealing with that, because that is something that happens quite frequently in an abusive dynamic where one parent is the lead abuser and the other is sort of the enabler to that degree.
Enabler meaning, don't worry about this, nothing really terrible is going on.
It's fine, nothing to see here. It's not as bad as you think.
Right.
Yeah.
You're upset, you shouldn't be. Go out and play baseball.
Other kids have it worse.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say something very quickly for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Jennifer is expecting a child, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And if you notice, you may see her sort of doing that, which mothers do in the last month or so before they have a baby. They sort of touch the residence of the incoming child.
It's been shocking to me how instinctive that has become over the course of pregnancy.
Protective, love.
Just sort of touching base.
Yeah.
Checking in. And even having a sense of like, I know he's there. Is he asleep? Is he awake?
Is he hearing my voice?
Which at this stage he is.
He definitely is.
He's hearing your voice as well.
Yeah, right.
Muffled though it may be. But that's an interesting piece of the attachment-based focus in EFT as well, is how early it begins.
Well, I was just putting it together with you because, you're smiling at me, but you smile a tiny bit more when you touch the baby. It seems to fit what you do professionally. You're an emotionally connected person.
It is an area of work that dovetails well with my personality, I think. And not that I am, the most emotionally connected or the most emotionally intelligent on planet Earth, but it is something that I enjoy and I have a natural pull toward. And so the work serves that.
Yeah, and this is a faith and work podcast. So what I'm noticing is that your persona, the way God made you, the way you've developed over the years, seems to fit what you're trying to do. That is to say, you're a person who wants to connect. You're connecting with your unborn child constantly. So you want people to connect. You want people to connect with each other. Maybe a couple comes in, you feel them distant from each other. If I were walking to the car with you and said, tell me what you do, how do you get people to connect? Could you give me the most important steps in the walk to a car?
It depends on the sort of answer that would satisfy you.
Oh, I'm very satisfied with any clear answer that occurs while we walk to the car.
If you are satisfied with the answer of, notice what is happening and consider what might be underneath it. For example, somebody who, if I'm working with a couple where one spouse is much more fiery in their presentation, and when they get worked up about something, they maybe even skew highly critical, and they're very quick to send verbal barbs over.
Spouse pulls back.
That's right.
They always lose.
It's like we've got one who's like,
right. And the other goes, my job is to be the peacemaker. There's no doubt. I'm not going to match this fire with my fire.
That's right. And they both have different functions to it. And so we get to notice what's happening, and then we get to notice what's the attempt that is happening underneath. So for one, the highly critical spouse is likely going to be somebody who is wanting to improve the relationship and wanting to grow it.
I thought you were going to say improve their spouse.
Potentially, but their spouse is part of the relationship. And so there's a function there. They are somebody who, in a nicer term for that might be that they are in charge of, growth and development for the relationship. That's how they view themselves. Whereas the spouse who is going to withdraw a bit more, or who is going to try and pacify, or who may be tempted to shut down and those ones to kind of dial it back down, they're going to function more like the quality control manager.
Homeostasis.
We want to keep things as solid and
unchanged,
structural
Let's not
integrity.
Rock the boat.
That's right.
Right.
And so there's things at play for each of them that are these healthy attempts, but they're just not landing.
So in the oddity of it all, I'm not a counselor, and I'll just say straight, I end up counseling people, pastoral role for years, more than I would like, and I find it utterly exhausting. But I'm not bad at it, if I may say so. People think I can help them, and I do sometimes, but I find it extremely draining, shall we say. But when I teach about it, and it's easier, I say the issue is transforming love and accepting love. So in any relationship, you want your friend, your child, your spouse to be the best person they can be. But if you're only asking them to become better and better and better, you want transformation, you become a nag or a critic or a constantly chiding voice. If all you have is accepting love, then you don't move them to do that which is missing in their life, and that becomes enabling or permissive, etc. I also point out when I teach about marriage, which strangely enough I do, that unequal or differential in the ways in which people argue or fight is a huge cause of distress in a marriage. So if they're both fiery, it works pretty well, right?
There's at least a sense of we're both in it together.
Right. Yeah. And if they're both kind of homeostasis, they're not constantly in tension. The problem is when one has one technique and the other has another technique, and the techniques clash and one person always wins because they're more powerful, more demanding or something like that.
Yeah, wins is a generous way of putting
I'm
it.
putting the word wins. Everything is in quotation marks. Does that sound kind of right to you? You want to comment on that?
I think to a degree. I mean, I do think that if you've got two folks who are very fiery and worked up without the ability to kind of do it productively.
Or regulate, we might
That's
say.
right. Then you're going to be in a constant state of enmity between each other. And that's really tough. And then if you have a couple who is, they both tend to be more passive, more calm, more permissive, you're going to be stuck with a couple who is disconnected fundamentally.
Yeah.
And there's no sense of where do we even go to generate some measure of connection. And so that's an incredibly lonely place to be as well.
All right, let me ask you to help out two people, a couple that's listening to you right now, and they think, I want to connect more. How can a pretty healthy couple connect more? What simple thing can they do today or tomorrow or the next day?
One thing I really encourage folks to consider when they're wanting to connect more is to check in with themselves and to assess, what does connection look and feel like?
Oh, just have to say, what is connection? Instead of just saying, go connect, ask what connection means to each person.
Because there are a lot of different avenues for connection. And for some folks, it can be, we are doing an activity together. Like when we're out golfing together, when we're doing a puzzle together, we're really connecting. For some folks, it's deep and meaningful conversation. For other people, it's just cuddling. For other people, it's sex. There are going to be a lot of different avenues.
How about going for a walk and holding hands while you walk?
That's a great way to connect.
I think so.
It's a great way to connect. We had to slow down. We used to go on walks all the time in our lovely neighborhood until he ruptured his Achilles tendon.
That'll definitely slow down the walk.
That'll slow you down a lot. So then we had to find other ways to connect when our walks were taken off the radar for us.
Yeah, my wife and I walk a lot. Just don't take your phone. It's a great way to make sure you talk for 30 minutes or so.
And you're also connecting with your neighborhood at that point as well.
You are. So let's talk about Storytell. That's kind of an unusual phenomenon. It seemed to me like maybe it's a takeoff to some degree on things like The Moth, Radio Hour, People Tell Stories, or the more story-oriented type of comedy you'll see in a comedy club sometimes. But this is a little bit more therapeutic or potentially therapeutic. My understanding, you tell me about the setup, is about an hour, 5 or 6 people speak, 10 minutes each, you coach them. First of all, my mind is blown at the idea that you can get 6 people to actually talk for 10 minutes, because most people have no internal clock. You say, please talk for 2 minutes, and they'll go 6.
Sure.
So you coach them to tell their story in front of a crowd. Some of them are maybe painful stories, and there's a therapeutic value. Others are more simple. I want to tell you something about myself that you may find edifying or interesting.
Yeah, we get quite a range, which I really like. It makes for a dull show when all of the stories are lighthearted and comedic, or all of the stories are heavy and dramatic. To have a mixture is one of the things that I find makes for a really good event and really helps people connect. We do a storytelling workshop with folks. So the process might be
beforehand for hours or minutes?
So usually about 1 hour.
Okay.
So we'll meet for coffee with a prospective storyteller, somebody who's pitched their story.
And it works pretty well. Most people, are these people that are extroverted and used to talking, or sure, not always?
We get some, we certainly get some folks who are extroverted and naturally drawn to the stage, but we get a ton of folks who are not.
Really?
And they end up delivering some of the best stories.
Do they work really hard at it?
Oftentimes they do. And not in the sense of, we try to encourage them not to overdo it to the point where it is causing them distress, but to the point of get comfortable and familiar with your story.
They're not going to get lost in the middle.
That's right.
Is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Is it more entertainment? Is it a way of gathering people together? Is it a way of helping people understand themselves in community?
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of work. Why do you do this?
It's something that it's very much inspired by things like The Moth, which is another storytelling entity out there that has been around for many, many years, that I really enjoyed in college and after college, and have been to a couple of live shows. When I got to St. Louis, there was no Moth-like thing here. And so one year, my roommates and I, we were throwing a housewarming party, and I convinced them to let us do a story-themed housewarming party.
Do you speak in public? Have you been an actor?
I've done a little bit of acting like in high school, but I did more speech and debate type stuff. And so there was a higher comfort level of being in front of folks.
And you wanted to share that with other people. You wanted to gather a posse that share your love. Is that part of it?
That was almost the opposite of what I initially wanted. The very, very first time we ever did this, I wanted it almost to get it out of my system.
Oh.
It was this thing that I just really, really liked and I couldn't stop thinking about. And I was like, okay, here's an opportunity to do it. And then I can just like say I've done it.
It's like bungee jumping. You know, you want to do it once in your life and drop it.
That'll be great.
But it worked too well.
It worked too well. And it was honestly it took probably 2 or 3 years of doing 3 to 4 events each year for me to come to terms with the fact that this was a good thing that people liked and wanted more of, and that was like reasonable and appropriate.
How many people come to a typical event?
Nowadays it's probably around between like 40 and 60.
That's a good number.
It is probably where we're sitting pretty. We've been in other venues where we were hitting like 100 people.
It was too much, too
big?
And
that was a little bit, especially for that particular venue. Well, it was literally too big. People didn't have a place to sit.
Okay.
And so that was tough.
But it shows a desire to participate, and friends come, and maybe some non-friends, some strangers come also.
More and more strangers. Nowadays, more strangers than not, which is pretty shocking.
The people who come, let's just say 100 people come. I know it's not that right now, but let's say 100 people come, and you're saying that maybe half of them may have no connection with the people on stage?
Yeah.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah, when this started, I mean, I was still a student at Covenant when we did the first housewarming.
Covenant as in Covenant Theological Seminary.
And so at that time, the vast majority of folks who were coming were friends, classmates, folks from church.
But it grew.
And
so if somebody's telling a difficult story, do you try to get it into the format we use here, creation, fall, redemption, glory, in any way? Not that they have to do it seriatim. I'm a created person. I'm a person of worth. But this terrible thing happened to me. They could be pretty dull if it were that obvious. But do you have that in mind to try to ask people to make sure they notice their creational goodness, their worth, no matter what happened?
So that is something
the brokenness
that has been a really interesting part of the evolution of our creative workshopping process. So the other 2 creative team members are both Christians. One of them is also a counselor who is a Covenant Seminary alumni. And it's not a requirement for somebody to be a Christian to be on our creative team, but it has happened up to now that like those tend to be folks who have an eye toward doing this type of work in a way that really brings out certain pieces of the story. Mm-hmm. And so having those themes in like our own, mind as we go into a workshop like that does tend to draw that out and helps us sort of like focus and hone in with a storyteller on certain aspects of their story that they may have not engaged before or that they may have not been aware of before.
But what I'm hearing is you're not forcing it into a grid. You're saying, I have in my mind the way the narrative of the Bible shapes all reality. We might have somebody who comes on stage who has definitely gotten to the brokenness and not out of the brokenness. They're still in.
They may still be in it.
Yeah, the story could be radically incomplete as they tell it. And they could end with something like, so I don't know what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm. And we've certainly had that before.
I bet you have.
But the reality is even them coming to an event like this, going through the workshopping process, being brave and vulnerable enough to get up on a stage and share a piece of their story with someone, even that action in real time is a part of the redemptive act that is an overall part of their story.
At least they comprehend it better. They might come in unsure about what their story means and have greater clarity as time goes by. What makes a good listener? Because you and I both know that the audience can make or break. And
absolutely. That is one of the things I have found that I love most about the Storytell events that we do is the audience relationship to the storyteller. For a lot of folks, there's a sense of, if I'm just going to kind of show up and passively engage, that's fine. It's not necessarily bad. It's just very dull. It's very flat. And quite frankly, I don't think you're getting your money's worth. So for a good listener, part of it is considering that this person is different from you and that what they are going to be saying is their story and not necessarily yours.
You don't have to make it your story.
You don't
it's
have to
unique.
make it your story. It may resonate with your story, and a well-told story is going to resonate.
With many people.
With many people.
Maybe not everybody.
Maybe not everybody. But a well-told story is going to include some component of their emotional reality. And so it may be the sense that I have never been through what this storyteller is talking about.
Right.
But I may have had a emotionally similar enough experience that I can kind of hook into that and feel connected to them without taking their story on as my own or trying to make my story theirs.
Yes. Or transform their story into your story. There's a universality in a good story. It may not be my father died when I was 7. No, my father's still very much alive, somebody may say. But there was some tragic loss that you had, and it's described in a manner that you can connect with it somehow. I like what you're saying. It sounds fascinating to me. I've watched 1 or 2, I guess 2 on YouTube, but have not gone to one live. And it makes me think I might want to see one at some point or other.
September 11th, mark your calendar.
September 11th. Okay, that's a little, it's a little ways away from
I
the
know.
current
We're having
date.
to take a break because of my
Yeah,
maternity
because
leave.
you're going to have a baby, and that's a very, very good reason to do so. I'll just say that audiences can make an enormous difference in the way one presents. I saw not long ago, I was invited to the United States Figure Skating Championship in anticipation of the Olympics. So these are Olympic trials. And, there's quite a few people that have no chance of making it to the team, but maybe someday they will, or they're 15th in the country. They're not going to be able to represent America, but they're still very good. And one woman fell down 4 times in very close succession, but the crowd just kept on cheering for her. And I mean, she was devastated initially, as you can imagine, but she kept getting better and better. Her score was not strong because she fell down 4 times. But she was smiling robustly at the end and clearly thankful for the reception the audience gave her and pulled her through. And of course, that can be true in any public performance. I remember, musicians also will do similar things. They'll talk about a good audience and a bad audience.
I mean, you're describing so well something that we see a lot with our storytellers whenever they get up and either are overcome by nerves or get a little bit lost in their story in the moment, and having an audience that is fundamentally for them.
Yes.
And makes that known either with cheers or a little like, you got this, or
right.
something
They say it
to
out
that
loud.
degree.
They interact good.
And not necessarily in an overwhelming, confusing sort of way.
Not shouting at.
Yeah, but in the sense of like letting that storyteller know like that the audience is with them in this moment and is not going to just abandon them because they've made a mistake.
Or because they're not connecting or think they're not connecting at this particular moment. So there's a grace in the people who come and a will to encourage. Let me go back to counseling for a minute, if I may. Thank you for sharing about Storytell. It's very interesting to me. What's 1 or 2 more things you would say? We have intellectuals on this podcast. We have manufacturers. We have all kinds of people. What would you say? I'm going to give you one more chance to address this. What would you say to someone who is pondering what you said repeatedly about connecting and people connecting? And we've hit the personal side of marriage a little bit, but there are different ways to not connect. You might not be connecting with your coworkers when you would like to, or perhaps a friendship has fallen by the wayside, perhaps a sibling. What would you say to someone who's thinking, I would love to hear Jennifer say another word about how I can connect with people in my life, not my spouse, maybe a child? Give us a thought or 2 for the person who's hungry to get better at connecting.
Well, I think my first instinct is to feel delighted that that person is tuned into their desire to connect, because it is very common in my experience to find somebody who does want to connect on some level but has no idea that that's what they're hankering for.
Oh, they're hungry for connection but don't know it?
But don't know it.
What's that
But
weird pain in my stomach?
They're so
they don't know the
disconnected
answer to
from
that?
their own self that they don't quite register that that's what's underneath what's happening.
That astonishes me.
Welcome to my field, Dan.
That somebody would not know that they're hungry for human connection. You're going to have to spin that out for a minute. This will be the last question. This is the last thing I'm going to ask you.
What a question
because
to
you're
end
just
on.
shocking me with this statement you're making right now.
Well, and I don't know that it's as simple as like if I went up to somebody and said, "Hey, do you like connecting with people?"
No, right.
Right? It's not going to be necessarily that black and white.
As the person has drifted away from family members and they've lost touch with their friends, but they don't quite realize they've lost touch with people that are important
realize
to them.
it, or they, are trying to connect. Like a good example is parents of adult children who the kids are maybe out of college, have started their own careers, maybe are at that stage of starting their own young families and are just generally more busy than they used to be.
They, meaning the children.
The children, yeah.
Right.
Meanwhile, the parents at that time are often at a point in their careers where they're starting to wind down a bit. Not necessarily all of them are yet in that retirement period.
They're not looking for the next promotion anymore.
Yeah, they're slowing down.
They're looking for the glide path.
Yeah, they're like, how do I start kind of like working myself, titrating downward in terms of what my load is. And so you have this sort of mismatch in terms of capacity. And then all of a sudden, these parents are like, what's going on in my kids' lives? And I want to connect with them, but there's not really a sense of them being available. And sometimes the parents know for a fact, like, I miss my kids and I want to connect with them. And sometimes it's just, I'm really annoyed that my kid never calls me.
Oh, so they're annoyed, but they don't actually understand what they truly want. That helps.
And so there are all of these things that sort of come up as cues or indicators, sort of like you might have a light going off on your car's dashboard that says like, service needed.
Yeah.
But it's not clear as to like what kind of service are we talking about?
We don't have an emotional dashboard that says that irritation you're feeling is actually not irritation. It's a desire to connect.
Yeah, you're feeling lonely, actually, and disconnected, and you are wanting to reach out to somebody, but maybe you don't necessarily know how or even instinctively know that that's what you want.
Or you're afraid of rejection if you try.
You're afraid of rejection. It feels really vulnerable.
Mm.
And so there are a lot of folks who, they're the term in our field is like a bid for connection. That their bids for connection show up as like jabs or darts or as
got it. Like, why don't you answer my phone calls?
Or for other folks, it's
the rubric of I know I birthed you, but I also know that you pick up 4% of my phone calls. Instead of saying, "Hey, honey, I know we live an hour and a half away. Can we meet 45? I'll come mostly your way. Can we meet for coffee for an hour?
Just been kind of missing you. Want to catch up."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So be positive as the counsel you would give, and recognize what's happening in your life and reach out and give it a try.
And in part, and consider what I think for a lot of folks, like, what are the things that make it hard? What are the blocks to connection? Whether that is fear of rejection or whether that is, oh my gosh, I literally don't know how. Nobody in my life ever taught me how to initiate conversation beyond how's the weather. And so there are a few different things that people may struggle with, and they may long for that connection, whether they know it or not. And then once they even realize that connection is the thing that they're wanting, they may be stymied as to like, how do I go about this?
So I have a variety of interests and comments here. And what you're saying is, for some people, it's very simple. You can recognize that you're hungry to find more time with your friend you've lost touch with or your family member. And so you just call them up because you're extrovert enough and you're confident enough. You've got enough relational wisdom that's easy. And others will find that almost an insuperable obstacle. I wouldn't even know how to go about doing that. And for that person, you say, go to your chat bot and ask the chat bot how you...
It's funny that you mentioned that because I do think, the more prolific AI becomes, already I've had a couple of clients come in and say, so I actually ended up using ChatGPT for this text that I wanted to send my friend. And they feel very embarrassed about it. And I get why, because, there's a lot of chatter about ChatGPT right now.
Right.
But
or Claude or whomever it is.
That's right. Whoever it is that they're using, whatever it is that they're using. But for a client who, is coming from an incredibly underconnected environment and has this high desire, and they are willing to not be stopped by the fact that they don't know how, that they're going to reach out to something as potentially like ridiculous as
Humbling, let's call it.
humbling.
Yeah, but they're willing to do it.
Yes,
So,
but they're willing to do it in
so do
effort
it.
to
Yeah.
connect. I mean, I
That's
think
good.
that's remarkable.
it's good. Do you have one more thing you want to say, Jennifer, before we go?
Dan, I think you should think about telling a story.
I tell stories all the time, I have to say. I don't get on a stage like yours. I get on other kinds of stages. But yeah, I'm a storyteller. There's no doubt. Well, it's delightful to spend some time with you. Thank you for your work, your ordinary
Thanks for
work
having me on.
as a counselor, and your extraordinary work on stages with storytelling. And we wish all the best for you and your husband recovering from his Achilles.
Thanks.
And we hope that he can run around the house frolicking with your brand new child before long.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
It's been good to spend time with you. Thank you. Working with Dan Doriani is a production of the Center for Faith and Work St. Louis. We seek to promote faithfulness in the workplace, in education, in discipleship, and in the stories of believers who've applied their faith at work. If you want to put your faith to work and change your corner of the world, visit our website, the Center for Faith and Work St. Louis. Look for faithandworkstl.org. That's one word. We'll help you start a cohort with like-minded believers who also want to practice their faith at work. This podcast is donor-supported. To keep us going, please donate on our website. Maybe more importantly, you can support us by listening, by subscribing, by sharing, by liking us, by posting us on your favorite platform, or go old school and tell a friend.